Hi, my name is Nikhil Agrawal. I'm one of the nephrology fellow at Harvard Medical School in Boston, and I'll be talking about the landmark trials in peritoneal dialysis. So today we'll be talking about trials that decided how important the residual renal function is and what KT/V to target. The four trials that I will be talking about are CANUSA trial done in 1996, CANUSA reanalysis done in 2001, ADAMEX trial done in 2002, and the Hong Kong trial done in 2003. Coming first to the CANUSA trial, or as it is more formally known as adequacy of dialysis and nutrition in continuous peritoneal dialysis association with clinical outcomes. It's CANUSA because it's Canada USA Peritoneal Dialysis Study Group. So this trial included patients who initiated peritoneal dialysis between 1990 and 1992 at 14 centers in US and Canada. There were a total of 680 patients enrolled in the study. Vast majority of them were on manual peritoneal dialysis or CAPD. The dialysis prescription was prescribed by the individual physician. It was not a randomized controlled trial, and the prescription was not pre-specified. The adequacy of dialysis was estimated by total weekly KT/V for urea and total weekly creatinine clearance. And I emphasize the word total. So the results were that for every 0.1 lower KT/V, there was a 6% increase in relative risk of death. And for every 5 liter per week of lower creatinine clearance, there was a 7% increase in relative risk of death. And for weekly KDOVs of 2.3, 2.1, 1.9, 1.7, and 1.5 respectively, the expected 2-year survivals were 81%, 78%, 74%, 71%, and 66%. So the trial concluded that it would appear reasonable to provide a high dialysis dose, maybe a KT/V of 2.1 or creatinine clearance of 70 liters per week. But, as I said later, it assumed that the peritoneal dialysis clearance and residual renal function clearance are equivalent. That's why it counted as a total clearance rather than just peritoneal dialysis clearance. So this study was contradictory to what evidence was there at that time, and the group decided to do a reanalysis. And this is the CANUSA reanalysis study. And what it is that the data that they had from the CANUSA study, they reanalyzed to address the assumption that renal and peritoneal clearance are comparable and therefore additive, which was the major criticism of the study. They had data in vast majority of the patients from the trial to distinguish between residual renal function and peritoneal dialysis clearance. So what they found is that a 5-liter increase in weekly GFR by the kidney, by the residual renal function, is associated with a 12% decrease in relative risk of death. But there is no association between the same increase in peritoneal dialysis clearance and relative risk of death. They also found that for each increase of 250 cc's of urine per day, there was a 36% decrease in relative risk of death. But this was not just volume related, because net peritoneal UF per 24 hour was not really associated with change in relative risk of death. Now we come to a randomized controlled trial, also known as ADAMEX trial. This was known as ADAMEX because it was done in Mexico and stands for Adequacy of PD in Mexico. The design of the trial was a randomized controlled trial looking at the effects of increased PD small solute clearance on mortality rates among patients who are on CAPD, again manual PD. They enrolled 965 patients undergoing CAPD between 1998 and 1999 and followed them for 2 years. The control group received 4 daily exchanges of 2 liters, which was the usual prescription in Mexico, at least at that time. And the intervention group had a target creatinine clearance of 6 liters per week, for which they were receiving multiple 2.5 liter or 3 liter exchanges, whatever is needed to achieve that creatinine clearance. And death was the primary endpoint for the study. So the results, so based on what they were able to achieve in the two groups, control group and intervention group, the study ended up comparing the creatinine clearance of 47 versus 60 liter per week, or the KD over V of 1.7 versus 2 per week. And the residual renal function was similar in two groups. So they found that the patient survival was similar for the control and intervention group. So there was no significant difference between KD over V of 1.7 and 2.0 in terms of survival. They did see that age, diabetes, serum albumin level, which is a reflector of nutrition status, and residual renal function were all significant factors associated with patient survival. The next randomized controlled trial was done in Hong Kong. That's why I'm calling it a Hong Kong trial. And this was again a randomized controlled trial which enrolled CAPD, manual PD patient, 320 of them. All these patients had a baseline renal KT over V of less than 1.0 to eliminate the effect of residual renal function. And they randomized them into three different groups. Group A had a KT over V goal of 1.5 to 1.7, Group B 1.7 to 2.0, Group C 2.0. And then they made sure that the difference in KT over V that is achieved is due to peritoneal dialysis clearance, not residual renal function. Follow-up period was about 2 years. So what they found is that the total KT over V between the three different groups did not significantly affect survival. There was no difference in serum albumin, nutrition scores, and hospitalization rate between the three groups. But in Group A, the group with the lowest KT over V, significantly more patients were withdrawn from the study due to inadequate UF and inadequate dialysis by the clinicians. And more Group A patients require erythropoietin, suggesting probably more uremic state. So the study from the Hong Kong trial concluded that although there is no patient survival difference, but does matter that the KT over V is more than 1.5. This list leads us to the NKF-KDOQI guidelines. And as you can see, and I've highlighted here, they recommend a KT over V of 1.7 per week. So this is how we achieved this guideline, and this is how we know that the residual renal function is really important in peritoneal dialysis. These are the links to the 4 trials that I talked about: CANUSA, CANUSA reanalysis, ADAMEX in Hong Kong. You can access these trials at PubMed. And then again, if you like the concept, please email us at fastpacednephrology@gmail.com to get notification about future videos, and find us on YouTube.